Hello F11 members and welcome to the Fundamentals of Post-Production tutorials for issue 88, May 2019. So this picture of Chesil Beach in Portland above Abbotsbury was shot earlier, just a few weeks ago, overlooking the Jurassic Coast. A rainy day, but our patience was rewarded by just these few seconds of light and this wonderful rainbow. And so what I did is I quickly made a panorama, overlapping frames, just a 4-frame wide panorama, but I used exposure bracketing as well to handle the contrast. And I've used Lightroom's Merge to HDR panorama mode to make this picture. So let's go through the post-production on this image now. And if I click left and before and after, you can see on the left the image that I'm starting with and what I've finished with. Quite a radical difference, right? So let's go through the production on it. Let's go back into loop mode now and then hit tab to get my control panels up left and right, and then go back into library mode. And what I've done is, you can see these flagged images here are the bracketed exposures which I've merged using Lightroom's Merge to panorama mode. So if I go up here, if I select again the images I want to merge, okay, and it's all of these, and that one, and that one. And now if I go up to the top tab, right at the top of the screen, Lightroom Photo, and then it comes down here to Photo Merge, and then you come along here and you see there's this HDR panorama mode there. Now can you see that's giving me a preview of what we're going to do. I'm going to actually click Auto Settings off there, because Lightroom tends to make a decision on what settings you need, and I think we as photographers who should decide on that. The end result is a picture that looks totally washed out, but nevertheless I think the information's there. So I'm now going to merge that and open it up in Lightroom in the develop module. So just give me a second to do that. And here is the resultant image. Looks pretty uninspiring, but let's get to work on it. And as always, the first thing I do is look at my black and my white points. It's virtually a default setting, a starting point for all of my pictures, which you probably, after watching countless of these videos over the years, I'm sure you realize. And so just move my black and the white points so that I'm optimizing my contrast, so I'm not clipping any highlights there. I always find it difficult to get it really accurate with the slider, so using the up and down keys on my keyboard helps me there. So plus 60 on my whites, minus 40 on my blacks looks about right for the moment. Just clipping a few blacks there, so let's just come up on that a touch. Can you see that little blue arrow up there went out, which indicated clipping of the blacks? Okay. Next thing I look at is, generally it's just too bright, the picture, isn't it? Now normally I would be using the tone curve here, but for reasons I'm going to explain later, in this particular case I'm going to use the exposure slider, and I'm looking at the sort of middle part of the frame, in a way ignoring the sky and ignoring this foreground in the shadow. So just bringing back my exposure to about minus 1.1 here gives me the exposure I want on this middle part of the image. But of course it's still just washed out, so this is, and that's due to all the rain in the atmosphere actually. So this looks like a situation for the Dehaze slider. So I'm going to bring this in, and very quickly it starts dealing with that, giving me a bit of clarity, but it's so easy to go too far, isn't it? And look at what it's doing to the colors as well. It's the blue in the sky is just looking sickly. Nevertheless, it's helped me deal with that long visibility. So I'm going to come to about plus 45 on the slider. Pretty heavy dose of dehaze here. And the overall color temperature of the image is just, for my mind, too cool. The blue in the sky is just out of control. So what do we do about that? I find this is obviously often a problem, and I hardly ever alter the color balance of my pictures, but all rules are made to be broken. So in this particular instance, can you see up here, it says 5100. That's the color temperature that the image has been imported at due to the camera being set at daylight white balance. I'm just going to put 5800 in there, which just warms up the picture, takes out that gruesome blue tone in the sky. It looks a bit more natural to my mind. So that's worth a treat, I think. But what's still apparent to me here is that the sky is just looking a little, we need a bit more clarity in the sky, a bit more contrast in the sky, and the foreground is a bit too dark. Generally speaking now, I'm going to just add a bit of contrast overall to the picture. I'm going to do that using this point curve here and come down to the bottom here and click on medium contrast to put that into the picture. Now let's use the grad tool here to deal with the sky. So if I hold down the shift key and bring my grad down, that enables me to keep the grad absolutely dead level. And now what I want to do with this is basically put a bit of contrast in there. Come out on those highlights are sticking for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. Every time I apply my grad tool, it starts with a minus 55 on the highlights. So I'll have to look into how to get around that. But it's not the end of the world. I take that out, and now I'm just going to put some density into that sky there. Obviously, it's a heavy, dramatic sky, and we want to make the most of it. So let's go with, again, I'm going to use the shift key on my keyboard rather than the slider. I'm going to go to about minus 40 there, and I want to put some contrast in as well. It's really angry sky, isn't it? Probably a bit too much there. So I'm going to come up again now, take a bit of that out. That's better. Minus 33. Click on done there. How's that looking? Pretty good, I'd say. Big difference to where we started with this picture. But the thing that needs dealing with now is the foreground is just a little bit too dark. And can you see all the adjustments we've been making have actually altered the histogram here? So I can afford to come up on my whites a bit more, which will liven up the picture. Hold down the Alt key, check where my clipping is going to take place. That's made a big difference to the picture, hasn't it? I'm clipping blacks now as well, so I need to come back on my blacks. Now I find I have to often come back and just fine-tune these black and white adjustments after making subsequent making adjustments before overall to the picture. Okay, so there I'm still clipping a few, can you see, just down the base of that tree, right down the bottom, I'm clipping a shadow there. So in fact, I'm going to take all negative black out of the picture. Still clipping a little bit of black there. So what I'm going to do now is come up on my shadows, shadow recovery. That helps that foreground, doesn't it? Quite a bit. And the picture's looking strong, but I still think it's a little bit dingy here in the foreground. So what I'm going to use is my adjustment brush here. And come down here and click on Show Selective Mask Overlay. Adjust the size of my brush here. Quite a large brush. And then just paint in the red indicating the area that I'm going to apply my adjustments to. And I don't need to be too super accurate because it's going to be a subtle adjustment, and because, can you see down here, I've got auto mask clicked on, so Lightroom is automatically selecting where it sees a definite edge there to apply the mask to. Click off the mask now and then come up here, again take that highlights out, and then just boost the exposure just a touch in that foreground there. Done. What do we reckon to that picture? Pretty strong, I'd say. I'm just going to come back to that grad that we applied to the sky. Click on the grad tool, click on the little dot there which makes the grad active again, and then I'm just going to come back, make it a bit of a softer grad, just a touch, and put in a little bit more density there. Good stuff, eh? And just a hint of dehaze, just a teaspoonful. Click on done, and I'm pretty pleased with that picture. Generally speaking, that's worked well. Okay, the middle distance is still a bit wishy-washy due to the rain going off, but if I try and take all of that out, it's really going to look quite unrealistic. So I have to be so careful. Let's just experiment with just a touch more dehaze for those distant features. I've taken it up to 50 now. If I go any further, I think it'll look really overcooked. So let's go back to the start and our finish point with this picture. And there we have it. So this is one of those pictures where it took a fair bit of attention, but I'm pleased. I think it's worked. Okay, thanks for your attention. There'll be more coming your way, of course, in future issues.